this symposium, I send to the organizers and to the participants to the symposium my best wishes. I wish you good work, and Crispina will read out my message.
But I will read it in English. You remember that Don Fossati, his book in 1961 was the first to confront the memorandum with the papal documents. And this book still stands as a definitive study on the enigmatic affair of Pierre d'Arcis. And we will see that a close examination of the documents does not permit an interpretation of a medieval fraud. His title is A Close Examination of the Memorandum of Pierre d'Arcis and the Writings of Clement VII. We all know that the shroud entered official history under the sign of the polemics. Unfortunately, many writers present only the accusations, even though these are not sufficiently proven. Little attention is given to the side of the defense, and the diverging opinions of the judge are passed over as if they were of no consequence. The opponents of the controversy, we all know, they are Geoffroy de Charny II on one side, on the other Pierre d'Arcis, the Bishop of Troyes, who believed the shroud to be a painting. The judge in the case was Clement VII, anti-pope at Avignon. It must be emphasized that only one document of accusation exists against the shroud, namely the so-called Memorandum of Pierre d'Arcis. There are a few documents from Clement VII, but there are none whatsoever from Geoffroy de Charny. Perhaps the Charny documents were lost, perhaps they were destroyed, or perhaps not even yet discovered. But they did exist, and their existence is deduced from those that are known to us. The affair was not easy for Clement VII. In the space of a few months, he changed his mind, he changed his opinion more than once. After the lapse of centuries, the historian can weigh the question with more serenity. Furthermore, the historian of today has the possibility to compare the documents with the shroud itself, with its negative imprints. In 1899, 1 year after Secondo Pia's photographs revealed that the imprints on the shroud are a perfect negative, the erudite canon Ulysse Chevalier began writing against the authenticity of the shroud, basing his conclusions on his research in original 14th century documents. His major text, Étude critique sur l'origine du Saint-Suaire de Lire, Chambéry, Turin, appeared in 1900. The documents that Chevalier found are contrary. What are the documents that Chevalier found that are contrary to the authenticity of the shroud? The first collection of documents appeared as an appendix in his Étude critique, and there were 33 items. 4 of these documents are not concerned with authenticity. They comprise the liturgical office approved by Julius II, dated 1506, part of a text in which a canon of Liri laments that the Church no longer possesses the shroud of Christ, a text of Sixtus IV, dated 1473, that indirectly mentions the Holy Shroud, and the brief report of the exposition of 1503 in Bourg-en-Bresse. Then there are 11 documents concerning a litigation between the canons of the Church because of the disappearance of the Holy Shroud and the proprietor of the shroud, Marguerite de Charny. And thirdly, Chevalier reports 5 labels wrapped around the documents. And Chevalier did not blush to include Calvin's derisory passage in Treatise on Relics, which was published in 1563. That covers 21 documents, that leaves 12, and one of these is of very little interest because it is only a 16th or 17th century resume of an original. Of the remaining 11, not all can be considered contrary to the shroud. The Memorandum 1 of Pierre d'Arcis heads the list. The document is undated, but historians ascribe it to the year 1389. The first version, the second document, would be the first version of the Bull of January 6, 1390. 3 and 4, letters sent by Clement VII to Pierre d'Arcis and the ecclesiastical officials of Autun, Langres, et Chalon-sur-Marne. And 5th, the report of the Liège investigation, which confirms what Clement said had established without giving any particular personal judgment. This report includes 6 documents, which are the 1389 letter of Charles VI, King of France, to the bailiff of Troyes, instructing him to requisition the shroud. Then there's the report of the bailiff, with 2 accompanying letters, also in 1389. An official letter from the King's Sergeant, 1389. The letter of 1390 from Clement VII to Geoffrey II of Charny, which is not at all concerned with authenticity. And then Chevalier's second collection appears in his book of 1903, Autour des origines d'histoire de l'Éré, avec documents inédits. And the 17 documents can be cataloged thus. There are 7 documents which do not mention the shroud. 5 are petitions concerning the Church of St. Mary of Lire, and 2 are memoranda concerning the anniversaries and foundations that must be performed. 2, there are 10 documents that mention the shroud. 5 of these presume authenticity, although they do not specifically address the question. In 2 of these writings, the Lire canons claim their right to have the shroud in the church. Another is a detailed report of the Poor Clare nuns of Chambéry, who mended the cloth after the fire of 1532. There's the letter of the Roman Pope, the Roman Clement VII, for the recognition of the shroud after the fire. And finally, extended concessions of indulgences by the antipope Clement VII at Avignon by reason of the Holy Shroud. The remaining 5 documents could be considered unfavorable to authenticity. They include 4 already published in the first collection, but now presented in other copies with slight variations, and a passage from the Tract on Indulgences, published in 1743 by Theodorus de Spiritu Sancto. As we see, the second collection of documents does not offer any new decisive element. All things considered, the documents contrary to authenticity, those that support a manual origin of the imprints, are reduced to one only, the Memorandum of Pierre d'Arcis. We have to say that, in general, we agree with the reconstruction of the events as they refer to the controversy between Geoffrey II and the Bishop of Troyes. We differ, however, in the evaluation of the documents, since they can be interpreted quite differently. One could rest the case on what is stated in the memorandum, or one could compare the written documents with the figured document, that is, the shroud. The conclusions are bound to be different. The interesting thing is that the figured document contradicts the written documents and demands a revision of the judgments expressed about it. For that matter, this appears also in the dispositions of Clement VII. they do not maintain a uniform interpretation, but between July 28, 1389 and June 1st, 1390, they change. To give weight to the written documents alone and to ascribe to them an absolute probative value, as Chevalier and others even recently have done, and to disregard the figured document, which is, after all, the primary evidence, is to close one's mind to a broader understanding of the question. First, consider the lack of documents. From the Charnys and the canons, no documents exist. From the papal legate Pierre de Thury, from the King of France, all these documents are missing. The memorandum and the bulls of Clement VII refer to 7 of these missing documents. In 1961, Don Fossati published his book, La Santa Sindone, Nuove Luce su Antichi Documenti. In this detailed study of the subject, the missing passages are inferred from existing documents. We lack the petition of Geoffrey II to the papal legate. We lack the legate's concession. We do not have the petition that Geoffrey II and the Dean of the Collegiate Church sent to the Holy See at the time the concessions granted by the legate were under discussion. There would have been a petition from Geoffrey II to Charles VI, King of France, and a probable letter from Charles VI in answer to his own letter back to Geoffrey II. The canon's recourse to the Holy See is missing, as well as another recourse of Geoffrey II to Clement VII after the investigation ordered by the king at the request of Pierre d'Arcis. There is no trace of the proceedings against Geoffrey I of Charny under the Bishop Henri de Poitiers. At the Curia of Troyes, no dossier existed on a case brought, according to Pierre d'Arcis, against Geoffrey I de Charny and the canons for the removal of the shroud from the church and the prohibition of exhibitions. The only person who refers to such a court case is Pierre d'Arcis in the memorandum. Well, what can we say about this memorandum? Chevalier stated, its authenticity is beyond doubt because I found the notes for it separated a long time ago from the archives of the bishopric of Troyes. However, this affirmation is not shared by other scholars. According to one historian, the notes found by Chevalier are not originals, but copies. I quote his words. My curiosity led me to the Bibliothèque Nationale to examine the famous evidence, and I did not come away convinced. This so-called original memorandum is in 15th century calligraphy. It bore neither date nor signature, nothing that could permit a guarantee of authenticity nor attribution to its author. It must be remarked, furthermore, that no authentic document of the period alludes to a commission named by Henri de Poitiers, nor any confession of a painter. So who are these experts who have decreed that this document is complete and indisputably the handwriting of Pierre d'Arcis? This is the end of the quotation. In spite of the disparity of judgments, there are no doubts about the existence of this document. The question to be clarified are rather these. Did the communication of the bishop, as it is in this document, arrive through bureaucratic channels and in official form to the Avignon court? Or was it only a personal promemoria that later passed into history as an official document, without actually being such. The text of the document is hardly conformable to curial style and rules. Eschbach stated in 1913, without date or signature, it is a promemorial of such incorrect style that one cannot attribute it to an episcopal pen. Nicola Camusat was one of those scholars who did not accept the memorandum. A canon of Troy Cathedral, Camusat compiled the record book of the Diocese of Troy, the Prontuarium, wherein he explicitly writes about the Collegiate Church of Lire, about Henri de Poitiers, and about Pierre d'Arcis. But he did not, however, transcribe the memorandum. Camusat's reason for the omission is not known. Perhaps the manuscript seemed to him to be a rough draft, exactly as it is defined by Chevalier, but never rewritten in official form to be sent to Avignon. Furthermore, from the writings of Clement VII, especially the letter addressed to Pierre d'Arcis, it does not appear that the papal dispositions were motivated by any specific request of the bishop. On January 6, 1390, the same date as the second bull, Clement VII sent a letter to Bishop Pierre d'Arcis, in which he says nothing of a previous communication from the bishop. It was, and still is, curial practice that any document that is motivated by specific circumstances regularly refers to the motivating communication. That's logical. The silence in this instance leaves us perplexed. It is instructive to examine the various petitions of Clement VII. From ample indulgences conceded on July 28, 1389, he shifted to restrictions laid down in the bull of January 6, 1390. Then, on May 30th, 1390, he made changes on the copy for the Vatican Register, and 2 days later, on June the 1st, 1390, he issued a new bull, again granting wide indulgences to all those who visit the Lire Church, where the much discussed object is venerably conserved. Vous voulez dire que je n'ai pas beaucoup de temps?
Pas beaucoup de temps, mais dites ce que vous allez dire. Je n'ai pas beaucoup de temps, mais dites ce que vous allez dire.
5 minutes?
Oui, 5 minutes.
It is may we have the first, on peut mettre le premier diapositive, s'il vous plaît? It's an important fact that in the brief space of 1 year, Clement VII used two expressions to indicate the shroud with its imprint. Figure seu representatio et picture seu tabula. In his written text on Fossati has continued with the Latin phrases, but to give greater impact to this difference, it seemed to me preferable to render them in English translation. Figura stands for figure in English as in Latin, and representatio means an image, likeness, or portrait. Pictura can remain as it is. Clement VII used the first expression, figure or image, in the bull of July 28, 1390. This does not seem to include the idea of a man-made object, and it could be the expression used by the Charnese. The second expression, instead, that's the memorandum. The second expression is picture or painting, leads one to a different interpretation. We see in the next slide, in the next, la prochaine diapositive, s'il vous plaît. This is the copy in the Bibliothèque Nationale of Clement VII's bull of January 6, 1390. The word copy is clearly seen at the top. In this part is written, and I translate, that the above-mentioned figure or image is not the true sudarium of our Lord Jesus Christ, but a kind of picture or painting, made like a figure or image of the sudarium. La prochaine, s'il vous plaît. Underneath that is the letter of the same date sent to the ecclesiastical officials of Autun. And if we jump to the third, we can see the original bull of January 6, 1390, which is in the Vatican archives. And la prochaine, s'il vous plaît. This is a continuation of the Vatican document. Bon, je pense que c'est bien ça. In the margin, the clerk, Joe Di Napoli, puts his signature with the date May 30th, and the lines he has crossed out are essentially the same that we saw on the Paris copy, that the above-mentioned figure or image is not the true sudarium of our Lord Jesus Christ, but a kind of picture or painting made like a figure or image. And if you will notice that there is a correction on the left-hand side, and not to lose any more time, I will tell you that this correction was made on the original bull of May 30th, 1389, and 1390, and the very next day a new bull was issued with the original inscription, with the original description of the shroud, which is figure or image. So what we want to point out is that the Pope Clement VII of Avignon first thought it was a figure or image of our Lord Jesus Christ. Then for some reason or another he changed his mind, and 2 days later he changed his mind again and went back to the original belief that it was a figure or image of our Lord Jesus Christ. And I think that this is the one thing that we do have to study very, very carefully, the documents of Clement VII, for an understanding of the memorandum of Pierre d'Arcis. Thank you very much.